Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right. I am John Palacio.
And I'm Marlene Cuellar, and thank you for joining us this morning.
It is a lovely morning across the city, Marlene.
That's right.
Yes, it is a beautiful Tuesday.
The weather has been very cooperative. We were told we were going to have beautiful days ahead. We'll see if anything's going to change.
Well, the pro is on the line.
Well, we have Crystal Rosales to tell us all the details. Good morning.
Hi,
Good morning.
How are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
All right. Crystal, that's great to hear. And
Yes.
we're commenting on just how nice the weather is. Tell us, what are we
Yes,
going to
it is.
expect today?
Well, mostly sunny skies today and clear skies tonight with little to no rainfall.
All right. So it continues to be dry.
Yes.
All right. And that 24-hour forecast?
Yes.
So what about the winds?
The winds will be east to southeast at 5 to 10 knots.
And the sea state?
Sea state will be slight.
All right. So it's safe for people to head out to sea.
Yes.
All right. And the high temperatures for today?
Today's highs will be 84 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 88 inland, and 77 in the Mountain Pine Ridge.
And tonight?
Tonight will be 76 degrees Fahrenheit along the coast, 68 inland, and 64 in the hills.
Okay. And what about the next couple of days? It seems there's going to be a slight shift in our weather.
Yeah. For Wednesday, we have isolated showers developing late Wednesday with slightly more over southern and inland areas.
Okay. So that means we're moving into a couple of rainy days?
Well, just for Wednesday, on Thursday, we should have slightly less, but still isolated showers, but not as much as Wednesday.
Okay. All right. And the showers will be affecting the entire country?
No, just mostly inland.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for that update.
You're welcome.
You have a great day today.
And you as well.
All right.
All right, so now you know exactly what to expect for the weather between now and the next 24 hours. We heard it from the professional.
That's right. Another sunny day with a bit of clouds. Should be dry. But you do want to keep in mind that tomorrow you may be seeing a bit more showers, especially if you're in the south or if you're inland.
Oh my goodness, good news, right?
Yeah.
Would it be?
Yeah. And it's not too warm. That's what I like. I mean, it's that time of year where a sunny day isn't unbearable.
Yeah. So while in the far frozen north, this is what they refer to as the cold season. What do you call it? In the far frozen north. I'm talking about in the U.S.
Like winter?
Yes. This
Okay.
is what they refer to as winter. We've got wonderful weather, and this is the reason why for the tourist season it's beautiful.
Oh,
It's
yeah. They come
very,
here to
very
thaw
lovely.
out.
Yeah, you said it right. They come here to thaw out. But nonetheless, we're so glad that we're in a lovely country with lovely weather and great people.
All right. So if you needed some sunshine, do take advantage of that today.
That's right, and it's that time of the morning whereby we mix up that morning tea, and we know exactly how
It's
you
actually
like it.
time for a bit of motivation for this morning.
It is.
You're jumping ahead.
You know what?
Clearly,
I'm just
you're excited
to be
about
here.
having that
I'm
conversation.
excited to be.
We'll get to that in a few. You'll find out why John wants to chime in on this one.
All
But
right, here we go.
let's get into some motivation to get us started for this morning, and that
All
means
right.
it's time for our eye opener. And our eye opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Because an idea or way of doing things is popular doesn't mean it's right for everyone. Part of the way that something becomes popular is that many of us don't take the time to determine what's right for us. We simply do what most of the people we know are doing. In this way, our decisions about life are made by default, which means they aren't what we call conscious decisions. There may be many other options available, but we don't always take the time to explore them. This may be the result of feeling overwhelmed or pressured by family, peers, and humanity at large to do things their way, the way things have always been done. Regardless of the cause, it is important that as often as we can, we decide for ourselves what to do with our lives rather than just drift along on the current of popular opinion. It helps if we are calmly persistent, consistent, and clear as we communicate to those around us why we are making the choices we're making. At the same time, we have the right to say that we are tired of talking about it and simply need our choices to be respected. Our lives belong to us, and so do our decisions. Those who truly love us will stand by us and support our choices. Never mind what's popular.
I really love it. I really love it. But for a lot of people, they'll tell you that you know what, this is just taking the wave is probably the easiest way to go. We're so afraid of what's next or what's on the horizon because we just don't know, and so we don't want to change from what we know. We're so caught up in what we've learned. We are heavily reluctant to read about what's there on the horizon or how to go around accepting a change. And this is in our regular life, the way we make decisions, the way we vote, the places that we go. It's always the what we know rather than the let's try this place or this thing and see what happens. I think it comes with the reluctance of what's going to happen. That's how I feel.
Well, I think that's a part of it. And I think that, I love this eye-opener.
Yeah,
I
I do.
really
I
do.
do too.
I think what it reminds us of is, one, that we are not all the same people. We don't have the same thoughts. We don't
Yeah.
have the same backgrounds.
Yeah.
And it's really important sometimes when we make especially important decisions that we're not just coasting. We're not just going with what everybody else does. You know, everybody grew up saying, oh, well, you know, I need to be married by this age, 2 children,
By
3
this age,
children,
yeah.
you know, mortgage, white picket fence by a certain age. And they kind of just follow through what has been the norm because that's what they saw, that's what people tell them.
what they were taught,
It's the same thing with jobs, it's the same thing in many different aspects of our life. But what I love that it reminds us of is that you can definitely do it that way and it's much easier. But are you being true to yourself? Have you taken the time to decide whether or not this path is what I truly want? And very often, you know, I find that people, it may be human nature. Sometimes we don't like to be that different. We don't want to be the one standing out in a room full of everyone who's doing the same thing because it brings more attention to you, because people are more critical. And so we prefer to just fall in line. But it's both ways for me. It's one for people who choose to live their life differently in continuing on that path, and for the rest of people who can be very critical and judgmental about it, to perhaps open your mind to the fact that people just have their own way. That's why Frank Sinatra's song is so popular. I did it my way.
I did it my way.
Because
Yeah.
sometimes we do. And you know what the thing is? If you make a decision that is out of the norm, here's the thing. You're going to face the consequence, not me.
Yeah.
So why should I make a big deal about it?
You're so right. You know,
And that's consequences or benefits. Maybe you chose the better path.
you know, and I'll tell you what, somebody's consequences benefits the others because you know exactly what to do. It's
Yeah.
the educational process of life. But you're totally right. Frank Sinatra said it that, you know, I did it my way. And I think for the millennials now and for those to come afterwards, this is definitely the path that they're taking. If you notice how things are today, we're not afraid to stand out.
Yeah.
You know what, this is what I want to do. And we continue to preach it on a daily basis. It happens in our eye opener. It happens when we watch stuff now on our electronics, either at home or anywhere.
Yeah.
Things and people are actually standing out. So people are actually going out on a limb. But one of the things that
Some, not all, though.
Not all, but you could see it's getting trendy. It's something that's coming in, you know, especially for, like I mentioned, millennials and those coming up afterwards. We've been saying this for a while, and people are trying to.
No, I think people have always done it. I think you've always had, you know, characters that you can think of in history that just chose a completely alternative path. And in fact, we talk about them
Yeah.
because they chose a path that somehow benefited us. If it was a inventor that just said, I won't give up, and created something critical for us today, when surely everyone thought they were crazy at that time, you know, you mean fly in the sky, have electricity, you know, like some of the simple things, have a computer in your palm. So I think that's kind of how it goes. And you know, even with generation change, and millennials do things differently from other generations, they can fall into trends as well. How much they are trying to match what they see on their social media and becoming more homogenous in that, or trying to be like everybody else there.
You're right.
So it is critical. And I love the final part, because at the end of the day, you can eventually just say to people, I'm doing it my way and that's my decision. Don't feel like explaining it to you anymore.
And speaking of the last part, it says, those who truly love us will stand by us and support our choices, never mind what's popular.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So
Love
keep on doing you. That's the most important thing. All right.
All right.
So that's a great precursor for our next conversation, right? So you wanted to jump into this. Go ahead.
You know,
Go ahead.
It actually slipped me. That's the thing. All right. So you ever try to make tea? You're probably boiling the water in the pot, and then by the time you get there, all the water has gone. Nearly gone. But here we go. It is that time of the morning whereby we present to you our morning tea and giving you the opportunity to chime in. It's a great conversation starter. So let me start your conversation by asking this. Now, Valentine's season is approaching, and that is proposal season, actually. Now, would you prefer a public or a private proposal? Huh. Well, I private, man. You know, I was just among friends. Just, you know, a few friends, like 8 of us. And I was extremely hesitant at the time because I didn't know I didn't know how to do it. That's the thing. And, you know, my best buddy, Harris, may he rest in peace, who laid him to rest a little after the Christmas season, he was the one who told me, why, go get the ring, man, go get the ring. And I was like, okay, you pressure me, man. And the man, he was like, just go get the thing. And so we gathered at the table and at the little bar thingy, and I went down on my knee and I said it. I asked the question. So for me, I'm private. I prefer to do it right there. There's some people who want to do it all bold and extravagant, but that's how they feel. What would you do? What do you prefer? What would you want? Everybody told me what's my Steve. Yes, I love it.
So, I mean, personally, I think, and I was having this conversation with the producer yesterday, and she brought up the thought, and, you know, Valentine's Day is kind of cliche for some people. I think to each their own. Some people really love public displays of affection, and I know. And I have seen some of the most beautiful romantic proposals. They're just amazing, you know. They really give you that little tear running down your cheek or melt your heart a bit. And it's beautiful to see people who are in love doing that. Personally, for me, I'm definitely private. I think that some things, and I don't mean private, it doesn't have to be 2 people. It's having your family there, when your family is there, and being able, but even if not, because the commitment really, a proposal is a commitment to be married, and it's a marriage is a commitment to sharing your life with a partner forever. And so it's like step-by-step basis. That's like basic level, you know. The advanced level is the actual marriage. And so it's 2 people that really have to come to that decision. Although by nature, a proposal is really one person deciding.
Would you say that the love language works like within?
I don't know.
There's some people who love gifts, and a big gift would be probably having an airplane up there spelling out, will you marry me? You've seen the billboards at the games.
I've seen some big ones here too in Belize. I've seen some friends get some pretty glitzy proposals as well. So it's not uncommon for us, and maybe it's a way of you're right, like a love language. The bigger the gesture, maybe you recognize how big my love is. But you do have to know your partner and know whether or not that will mean the same thing to you. Stephen, stop laughing. Why are you laughing?
He's just jittery.
I know. All right. So there you go. I chimed in on Mary. But here's the thing, though.
Oh, my
As I
gosh.
said, we've all seen these beautiful proposals before. I'm sure we've all seen some viral video of one.
Yeah.
And if you have somebody that maybe you want to pop the question to, we are looking for someone who wants to get engaged. You got to contact us. We're not giving out all the details yet. Of course, Love Day is coming up.
Love Day is
so
coming
if
up.
you're at that stage and you're ready, get in touch with us. Send us an email. OYE@channel5belize.com. You can also send us a message on Open Your Eyes BZ. You can send us a message on our Instagram, OYE Belize, and we'll follow up with you from there. Our producer is ready for those suggestions.
Look, make the step. If that's how you really do your thing, all right? And we're ready to host you here. But nonetheless, it is a great conversation starter, and you could have that conversation on your social media platform and chime in with us, all right? But it is a lovely morning. Like we mentioned, we've got 3 wonderful conversations lined up for you. As a matter of fact, this morning we'll be starting off with representatives from the Department of the Environment, the Belize Bureau of Standards, on the implementation of biodegradable standards.
All right, and the second part of the show, the Belize Bank has recently received, made quite an accomplishment. They received an investment grade rating, and we're going to find out exactly what that means, especially for customers here in Belize.
And for the third segment, this week, one of the things that we'll be doing is that we'll be featuring Everyday People feature, actually. And for today, we'll be starting off with, or we'll be having in with us the mompreneur, a techie and autism advocate. And she'll be in with us to tell us all about her ordeal.
All right, so that's what we have lined up. We're going to get to that break.
But before we do that, yes, there's somebody celebrating your birthday today. If it is you, wishing you all the best. But we've got a name here, and that individual is none other than Kwame Bennett. Happy birthday to you, Kwame. Wishing you all the very best, coming from all of us here on Channel. I want to open your eyes and at Channel 5.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take that break. And when we come back, we are going to be talking about standards for biodegradable products. So please stay tuned.
The Belize Bank introduces its mortgage loan promotion for first
Good morning and welcome back to Open Your Eyes. We're now moving into our first segment for the morning. Then again, a wonderful conversation about to be have here. Department of the Environment and Belize Bureau of Standards on the implementation of biodegradable standards in Belize, of course. In with us, we've got Dr. Kelvin Okamoto. He is a technical expert from ASTM International. We also have in with us, we have Maxine Monsanto. She's an environmental officer. We have on the corner, Lloyd Oriano from the Belize Bureau of Standards. So guys, good morning and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning.
And it's so nice to have you in. It's a cool Tuesday morning. All right, all right.
Yes.
Now, this is definitely something that is going to be new for the country. We always mention that, and we were mentioning this morning, change is different. Change is very, we're reluctant to get change. So let's jump on into this implementation of biodegradable standards. What does this mean for our country?
You'd like me to start?
Yeah.
Okay, as you are aware, Belize is in the process of phasing out single-use plastics, and one of the questions we get a lot from private sector and from the general public is, what are we phasing to?
Yes.
There are two options. One, the preferred option from the department, which is you go strictly reusable, or two, you transition to biodegradable products. That's the second option. To transition to biodegradable products, importers and manufacturers need to know, okay, what type of biodegradable products are we willing to allow in? And so the development of these national standards is to guide private sector in knowing what they should manufacture and what they should import in, what standards the country in essence is going to say, this is what we find acceptable. So what the Department of Environment did, and this is true, this is funded by both the government of Belize and a grant from the British High Commission in Belmopan, was to work with the Bureau of Standards in development of national biodegradable standards. And one aspect of this is capacity building, training both public sector and training private sector in this area, which is where these two gentlemen come in. And I'm going to pivot to Lloyd so he can continue this conversation.
All right, Lloyd.
Okay, in continuing that discussion there, well, the Bureau of Standards, as we know, or everybody should know, is the legal entity within the country with responsibility to develop standards in terms of the establishment and promulgation of the use of those standards. Our primary role in terms of this process here is to actually ensure that there is a process in place in terms of putting in the right standards for the country of Belize. By how we do that is to establish technical committees, having the right people around the table that can actually make those decisions in terms of putting in their technical requirements that will be applicable for the country. Now, how we do that is based always on scientific justification. Now, you might know that, or we all know that this is a relatively new area in terms of the relatively new technology for the country, and even sometimes for most parts of the world. So then one of the things is that we found out while we're doing that is that while we say that the technical committee is responsible to establish or to agree on all these technical requirements, we found out that the awareness and knowledge in these areas is very limited. So we decided that, you know what, well, we need to get and to put this into perspective. Luckily for us, we do have a memorandum of understanding with ASTM International, and through that arrangement, we were able to source the necessary network of expertise that we can use for the country of Belize. Now, what we have for the next 2 days is a technical workshop on biodegradable and compostable materials. And the first day today is more for the regulators, and tomorrow is for private sector. You might ask why we separated. Well, actually, we can't have one big group in one, so we try to get the most common interest together, so that we can have a smooth discussion and feedback and buy in terms of what it is that we're talking about when we speak of biodegradable and compostable materials. And so we do have a third day where we'll have Dr. Okamoto spending a day with the technical committee to actually provide the technical guidance, so that at the end of the day, the committee is guided by the best available expertise out there, right? And so that is why Dr. Kelvin is here to assist us in that regard.
You know, it's interesting because in reviewing the material, you're right. I don't think we think of how important standards will be in this process. We see something, say, biodegradable, we say, oh, this is great for the environment. But we don't think how long it takes to break down or what process it will take, and if we can do that in Belize. So I may be buying something that I think is better than plastic, but it may take quite a lot of time, or we may not have the expertise here. So before we talk about the standards that we want to develop and move into, have we assessed the quality of the biodegradable products that are currently in country?
Yes, there was it wasn't very many companies that are importing in country.
Okay.
So at the time when we started this process, we did do an initial assessment to determine what is actually coming into Belize.
Yeah.
Most of it is paper, some of it is biodegradable plastic, and Bureau went through a research process where they checked to see what it was, and using that with the technical committee, we came up with a starting point as to where we want to go.
Okay.
And so based on the products we currently have, are we doing okay in terms of the quality of biodegradables we're bringing in?
Yes, I would say pretty much we're doing okay in that regard, but you find out that there could be a negative effect towards that as well, because you would find that maybe labeling is very important in this aspect.
Of course.
Very, very important. And you would find that if we cut off the importation of these products, everybody will start to label biodegradable. And you as the consumer, do you know, or how am I assured
It says
that I am
biodegradable,
buying
so we'll get
a
that.
biodegradable
And I'll
product?
think I'm
How?
doing something right.
Yes.
Yeah. So all these things we need to carefully think out how we are going to do that. I'm going to be very frankly in terms of setting the standards is not the actual hardest thing. It's the conformity assessment to those standards. That is the very difficult task that we have ahead in terms of ensuring that indeed that biodegradable cup is indeed a biodegradable cup. And is it fulfilling the objectives of the regulation, and is it in compliance with the standard that we have put in place?
Shouldn't these things have been done prior to saying, you know what, we'll just stop the import, we'll just stop with single-use plastic bags? Shouldn't we have, been able to do these things before we get to that stage? I think this is one of the things that's causing the uproar. It came at the hop. All right. Yes, we're phasing out. It's a phase-out process. But it was said that, you know what, we're not able to import these things anymore, and manufacturing companies, you're not able to manufacture these things. Where are we there?
Well, I will say in terms of the standards process, it does require some time. Sometimes, for example, the Department of Environment through this initiative came to us, we need standards. Sometimes if you would come to us, you need a standard, you need it like last week. And when we would tell you, well, okay, the standards, considering the processes, and if there needs to be a new standard, no less than 2 years to develop that standard. All right? So it is a process. At the end of the day, I think we've started the process simultaneously in looking at the regulation and looking at the requisite technical requirements. I think it's a simultaneous process that we did at this point in time. Depending on this implementation structure, then of course sometimes you would think that you should know these technical requirements prior to setting up any technical regulation or any conformity assessment program, right? So first the standards, then the conformity assessment program.
But occasionally, sometimes, because of time constraints and because of the way the process goes, we need to get certain things started. So the phase out has started, but the lock on importation has not occurred as yet. The first cutoff date is April 15th. So there is still time, and during the last 2 years, there was development and discussion and consultation and everything to get to this point, which is where we're Dr. Okamoto in country now to train the private sector.
To move into that next phase.
Yes.
Correct. So our primary objective for the next 2 days is to actually create that awareness in terms of what it is that we mean when we say about biodegradable and compostable materials, and that is the reason why Dr. Okamoto is here, to try and assist us as much as he can in terms of in that regard. So
So, Dr. Okamoto, there's been quite a bit put on you so far to explain.
We need your
But
assistance
before
here.
we get there, I want to acknowledge the fact that, change is difficult. And that's one of the things we're trying to achieve here. Secondly, Belize is ahead of the curve with this particular initiative, although other countries have. So based on your experience, when you look at the phase-out plan, and it seems you've had a hand in it, what are some of the expected obstacles along that way?
Some of the expected obstacles are understanding what biodegradable means.
Yeah.
One of the big issues is that there are lots of ways to biodegrade. You can biodegrade in water, and soil, and compost, etc. And what biodegrades in one condition may not biodegrade in another condition. So when you say biodegradable, is it water, is it soil, is it whatever? And that's a very difficult concept to get across unless there's a lot of public education and so on.
Yes.
With Belize having the population that it has, it makes it easier to actually get to reach your total population, they say, rather than in a country like the United States. The nice part is that the United States, Europe, Japan, and other places have already done a lot of things needed to actually certify and to test the different products. So with Belize being what it is, I mean, often what you can do is often work off of what the other countries have already done, which will reduce your cost dramatically and also make it much easier to implement.
But in terms of international standards and also capacity in Belize, because where I'm sure in the United States, they may have more access to tools to do different processes of breaking down whatever biodegradable item. Will we have that here? Will we have the, whether it's weather conditions or equipment or even, I don't know what else would be used, but any other element that will be necessary?
And that's a very good question. And that's where we have to have a discussion on Thursday as to exactly what conditions do we want to set the standards around for how you do, say, environmental biological degradation. Or do we want to do composting? And composting, actually, the nice part about composting is there's very set conditions you should really actually use or have operate in the compost. So it doesn't really matter whether you're in a warmer, humid environment like Belize or if you're in Alaska in a very cold, dry environment. Compost is supposed to operate the same way. So, one thing they are looking at is composting, and then how do we set that up if that needs to be set up here.
I also wanted to, and I'm glad you spoke about the weather, because here in Belize there are only two. It's either wet or it's dry. Now, while we're moving into this, is it a good thing for us, especially that our weathers are wet or dry when it comes to the entire biodegradable process? Does this put us in the forefront, or to say this is better for us or worse? Where are we there?
Good question, and I would say that it really isn't better or worse for you. What you do is you find a biodegradation conditions that work for Belize. And there are, even in the US, you can go from very cold to very hot, and you can use similar tests across the whole country to indicate the biodegradability of a product. Lab tests are one thing. The other thing you can do is also do tests in the field, to actually test in the field before you actually get it out there for final use. And in fact, what we're finding is field tests are often very helpful because your conditions in the lab are going to be very set, whereas your conditions in the environment are not. And so you really do want to do field testing too. That does add time, but your lab tests tell you what you can and cannot use in the field.
So let's move into our crash course here in terms of how you break down a biodegradable product. What are the typical options?
The typical options are composting. And composting, there are lots of different types of composting. There's industrial composting, which is your large piles by the which are set up by companies or so on. You can also do home or backyard composting, and you can even compost using worms called vermicomposting. The other ways are there's soil biodegradability, there's water biodegradability, and there's even anaerobic digestion. And anaerobic digestion means without oxygen in a vessel, and typically that generates methane, which if you let it released is 34 times worse for the environment than carbon dioxide is.
Wow.
But the nice part about doing it in a vessel, you can capture that gas, and methane can be used to fuel vehicles, run generators, and so on. So as long as you capture that methane, that actually becomes a usable fuel.
Yeah.
It does require different infrastructure to
Yeah.
do that, but that's one possibility too.
Yeah.
And there's something to note that in all of these methods, the biodegradable product, the waste products need to be properly collected,
Yeah.
properly disposed of, and need to reach the landfill site in order for that to occur. So the idea of looking at it as just, we got a biodegradable item, just throw it out
Well,
there.
I mean, I was going to say, some people do have the practice of attempting to do composting at home. How different is this from what we're talking about?
It's, if done properly at home, it's not much different than doing industrial composting.
Yeah.
You want to get to the similar conditions, but it also requires you to know how much green and how much brown product and how much food you're putting in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So are you putting in a lot of dead leaves or dead branches and trees? Or are you putting in a lot of green leaves and so on? And there's a ratio you're supposed to follow. The industrial composters know how to do it, but at home, you take whatever's in your lawn. And I mean, that's kind
I'm
of difficult
pretty
to
sure,
do.
or leftover produce, especially.
Right.
Mix
Plus
it
you
up
want
with
to put
some
all your
soil.
food scraps
Yeah.
in there and all that sort of stuff, and that changes it. So home is not going to be as controlled as an industrial process, but
Yeah.
it is still something that can be done.
Yeah.
And it is a way to get rid, not put the organics in a landfill, which you don't want to do in the long run.
Yeah.
So where is the solid waste management in this conversation?
They are members of the technical committee. They're
Yeah.
part of this development process. And as you know, the phase out is just one aspect of waste management. There is another aspect where they are also piloting projects to see, okay, how can we recycle? How can we do collection, separation, probably reduction of waste?
Yeah.
And they're part of the entire process.
From what we've heard from Dr. Okamoto, what are we going to adapt to try and get this project rolled out?
Well, there's at this point in time, in terms of how the standards are being structured and in terms of priority, which one is it that we want at this point in time? We've identified a series of them, both for end of life, for the final products and so forth. So right now we're focusing on the final product in terms of if you have a clamshell, for example, then what are the characteristics, what is the composition of that clamshell that it should be in terms of determining that that is indeed a biodegradable or a compostable product. So that the standards for those.
So you're going to
is-
have two different classifications.
Correct.
Okay.
So we're going to have those different type of classifications in terms of the quality of that product as well. Not
Yeah.
only looking at what the contents of that product is going to be, but also looking at the quality parameters. Thereafter, we're going to look at perhaps standards for the intermediary end products and the feedstocks. We're going to look at standards for example, the waste management and the industrial composting and so forth. That is the down the road. For now, the immediate priority for us is looking at what the final products will be, because of course the importation, the local production,
Yeah.
the local manufacturing, we need to know for certain. Or everybody wants to know
Yeah.
what are going to be the requirements. If you're going to import, then you want to know what are the standards that Belize is going to consider in order to allow to produce or to import those products. So that is the first thing we're going to look at. That along with the labeling requirements.
Yeah. Are you going to do a grading system for the biodegradable products?
Well, that is on the table that we have now.
Suggested.
Yeah.
It is something that has been suggested, and we're, of course, that's why we have the technical guidance here. So we're hoping that by Thursday we know exactly what it is that we're going to do. So, for example, for now, we have a threshold in terms of saying, well, at least 50% of the product must be originated from biomass feedstocks.
Yeah.
And, well, we want to put in a system in place, a grading system in place, so that the more biodegradable or the more compostable a product, then there is a better incentive for you to want to, because of course you could, there is an issue also as in terms of costing, whether the more compostable, the more expensive it is. Right? So you want to have a grading system in place that you have an incentive to bring it to want to sell that particular product.
And it also allows the market and the consumer to then decide whether or not we're going to go with the lower one, as long as it meets the threshold, or if we're going to spend the extra money, or the manufacturer to say, you know what, I want to go with the higher threshold, I'm going to invest in that and produce that for the country.
And
it will be entirely up to them.
And boy, money is an important part of this conversation, right?
Extremely.
So I want to be clear, because I think one of the things we do know is that styrofoam was ridiculously cheap in this country, because it was put under packaging material. So it was at a much different cost than what even plastics and paper were at. So we're not going to see those type of prices for biodegradable products. But we still see biodegradable products a lot more expensive in the stores. And so when we're talking about even, and you said it very clearly, a product that perhaps has more of the materials that will make it break down faster, will probably be a bit more expensive. I mean, how do we counter this? Because people will need these products and they can't necessarily assume the cost.
This is where the development of the incentives package through the Ministry of Trade is occurring. So there are different components and different players. Solid Waste is doing a component as it relates to solid waste management, Bureau of Standards, and you can clearly see the collaboration. Bureau of Standards is working on the national standards. The Department of Environment is handling coordination and public awareness, and the Ministry of Trade is dealing with the aspect of the incentive package for the importers and manufacturers for these products. So hopefully in the future we should see some changes in that area with the pricing of the products.
Yeah.
Well, it does seem like a collaborative effort. Now, one of the things that we've got, like I mentioned, we've got manufacturers of single-use plastics in our country, and one of the things that we're hearing from them is that, you know what, people will be losing jobs because they might not be able to. Might not be able to go the route of making biodegradable products, or so how are we going to quell that situation then?
They have been part of the development process from the start, from the time the cabinet made the announcement. And again, it is the collaboration and work that is going on with Ministry of Trade, and they have been given the options to transition or to move to other things. We have some of those manufacturers who have found alternatives, and they say they will be bringing those in. But again, this is a market issue, so they need to, it's not as if they can keep producing a product that globally is slowly being phased out, even within
That
our
will be
own
illegal,
region.
essentially. Yeah.
Which is why it's a phase out. It's allowing you the time frame to wind down your production, wind down everything, and to move to something else.
And in terms of how comparable is it, the cost of producing a biodegradable product that meets the 50% threshold versus what they're producing now?
I would want to think of Dr. Kelvin.
Can you?
Okay. Well, one of the things I'll note is that if, depending on the product that they're making now, with petroleum-based or that are not biodegradable, sometimes you can actually put in only a few bits of extra pieces of equipment to actually do the conversion. So if you make a plastic bag today that's polyethylene, the standard material, you can switch to a biodegradable material by installing what are called material dryers to dry the material before you actually run it. If you do that, you can actually use the equipment you presently have. So the switchover for some of the products is not going to be too dramatic.
Okay.
The issue is that polyethylene is very inexpensive. And versus if you switch to the material for the bags, you're talking probably 2 to 3 times the cost for that material. And that's where your major cost comes in. It's not really the processing, it's actually in the material itself. And one would have to determine how one offsets that extra cost.
And what's been done typically in other countries that have already made this step?
Most of the countries, it's just a market-driven issue. Unfortunately, that makes it very slow in the conversion. In the US and Europe right now, it's more voluntary, though Europe is moving towards a mandatory switchover. But right now, there's no real incentives to actually do the switchovers. In a country like Belize, which is small enough, that may be much more manageable to actually do something like that with incentives. Whereas, it depends on what your country's economic capabilities are and so on, and what you're actually driving towards.
What I also hear from what you're explaining is there are business opportunities as well. And Belize also being rich in certain resources, we may have some of the raw materials here that we're not taking advantage of.
Yeah.
Is that part of the conversation that will be you'll be putting forward in the next 2 days?
That will be part of the conversation. If you have any agricultural resources that could be used to make, say, pulp molded products like what's shown on the screen right now, then you can use
Pulp
those.
products? So
Pulp
like
products.
the trash that's left behind, the biodegradable?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
So if you do sugar cane, you press out the sugars, you have something that's left behind that's called a bagasse.
Yeah.
You can actually shred that and turn that into fiber that can be used to make products.
Okay.
So there's different things that you can do depending on what your resources are, especially agricultural resources.
Okay.
And for Belize, that's also what the Ministry of Trade is looking at, because what they have noted when we started this process was we are an agricultural society.
Yeah.
We do have the actual byproducts on hand that can be used to contribute to making biodegradable materials. It's just
Definitely.
that we don't have, or we only have like one facility. And so the idea is to encourage other manufacturers to come in and set up shop, because the raw material is here. It's an opportunity, and being Belize links with Central America and the Caribbean,
Definitely.
Yeah.
it's an opportunity to export to boat.
Absolutely.
The door is wide open. This is definitely one of the things that we're seeing, especially with our neighbors right across from our borders. And which leads me to ask about because it's the implementation of the biodegradable standards, and it says January 28th to the 30th. Tell us again what's going to take place here and who should be there.
Okay, first of all, I would have already mentioned that these 2 days is heavily to focus on creating that awareness and
Yeah.
that technical know-how in terms of more or less what it is to be biodegradable and compostable material. On Thursday, we will get that technical guidance for the technical committee, having heard different discussions over these 2 days from private and the regulators. Take those into consideration, and then we have what we call a final draft standard.
Yeah. Oh, that was going
For
to
the
be my
country of
question. I
Belize.
mean, how much
So-
will the participants be able to contribute to what will be the final standards?
Yes, I would have. Okay, very good question. In terms of the standards process, it allows for everybody to be able to be a part of it.
Yeah.
Contribution, even the consumer can have access to what we're doing in terms of reviewing what we're doing and have comments in that regard.
The,
Yeah.
the process basically today is for regulators. Invitations have already gone out. Bureau sent out invitations. So today is the government regulators. Tomorrow, invitations have gone out to well over 60, I believe.
Right.
Of
Right.
private sector who will be present in the room. Thursday is a specific consultation for the technical committee that has been in existence for the last year, that have been putting together these standards. There is already a preliminary draft on the table, and Thursday is to review with Dr. Okamoto. And then following that, we go through, the technical committee meets one more time, I believe, and you can
Yeah.
correct me, to approve those, at which point they get published for public review.
Okay.
So the same way how we go through a review process that we did for the legislation, we'll
Yeah.
be doing the same process for those standards, but we will be following Bureau of Standards legislated guidelines.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the same time, we're also looking at the process in terms of what will be the most adequate certification process
Yeah.
for the country of Belize to accompany those standards as well. So.
What about the testing after the regulations? Are you getting, I mean, you spoke for yourself that that's going to be very complex.
Right.
And if something is supposed to take 80 years to break down, I don't know what the 50% threshold allows for. How do you test this in a lab?
Well, one
Do
of
we
the,
have the equipment?
We don't have the in-house capability. By that I mean the in-country capability to be able to perform those tests. But
Yeah.
one of the good things is in terms of the conformity assessment aspect is that what you call third-party certification systems, meaning
Okay.
that you partner or you use your analysis from a recognized laboratory or somebody else who can perform that test,
Yeah.
and you establish the equivalence and to ensure that it does meet what you are looking for the country of Belize. and then you can have that, you can decide whether this product does indeed comply with what the Belize technical requirements are for biodegradable products. That is-
In biodegradable products, largely what we're, the standards set limits on how long you can take
Yeah.
to biodegrade. So for composting, your maximum time is 180 days, 6 months. For soil biodegradability, you set it up as short as possible once the material is disintegrated or broken down. And in water biodegradability is the long one. That one is going to be 2 years or so. But there are limits to how long. If it starts to go beyond those, then it's really not considered biodegradable because it's in the environment much too long. It's a microparticle, microplastic, micro whatever. We do try to set limits on that.
Yeah.
And just to be clear, the legislation that recently got enacted on the 15th of January sets two very specific national minimum thresholds. The standards will provide more detailed guidelines and restrictions, but nationally the two thresholds that have been set is that it needs to have greater than 50% bio-based content, which is the biomass, feedstock, and
Yeah.
so forth. And it needs to be able to degrade within 365 days in our national disposal site. So
In our national
it's
disposal
a sanitary
site.
landfill.
That's,
Well, we don't have enough time to go into the other part of it because let me tell you, I can foresee some people saying, "Oh, it's biodegradable."
That's
Yeah.
straight away.
They do it already
Yeah.
with the plastics.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is a whole other issue that we do have to tackle.
Right.
But in the meantime, I know you have quite a bit of work ahead today
Yes.
and tomorrow and also on Friday. And we thank you for coming in
Thank you.
and letting us know what you're setting out to do. Right?
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
We're going to go ahead and take a break.
And when we come back, we'll be chit-chatting with a representative of the Belize Bank on their investment grade rating. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
With over 100 years of service
So class, let's review your homework.
And welcome back. It is a lovely Tuesday morning, and we're now moving into our second conversation for the morning. The Belize Bank receives investment grade rating. Now, in to tell us more, we want to know exactly what that is, but Filippo Alario is in with us. He is actually the Deputy CEO and the Chief Risk Officer for the Belize Bank. Sir, good morning and welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, so the bank recently went through a very exhaustive exercise. We decided that it's time for us to get a health check
Yes.
from a well-known rating agency called CariCris. CariCris is based in Trinidad and Tobago, but is an affiliate of CariSil, which is an affiliate of Standard & Poor's, who is a gold standard in terms of credit rating agencies.
Okay.
We're very proud of it. We are the first and only Belizean company that has a rating. We came out very good.
Yeah.
You know, it's very important for us to know how we are doing,
of course,
vis-a-vis our peers here, our peers in the region,
Yeah.
and actually our peers internationally.
Excellent.
Let's step back to the preparation and even the decision to go to be essentially assessed and see exactly where you are.
Preparation.
Yeah.
Took about 10 years.
Wow. It's a lot of time.
It takes a lot of time because it requires a culture of compliance. It requires a culture of strong policies, strong procedures, and it has to be evidenced throughout the hierarchy of the organization. So you have to go from an office assistant all the way to the chairman and the board. And when you are rated, they don't want to look at 1 quarter or 1 year. They want to see what were the trends going forward. They look at your strategic plan. They want to check you against your strategic plan, and they look at your strategic plan going forward. And so that takes a long time. It's changing the DNA of an organization is not easy. Of course, we are examined a lot.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
By our regulator, who is a very strong regulator, by our auditors, by external auditors, by our anti-money laundering auditors. Our holding company is listed in the London Stock Exchange. So there are a lot of things that look at the way we
you
behave.
already had standards in place. It was moving towards this particular rating. But when you speak of changing a culture within an institution, that can always be a challenge.
Yeah.
I know recently with the money laundering issues, there were some compliance or some regulations put in place that all banks had to change their systems internally. That was difficult for the public to get used to. Talk about some of the other cultural changes that the bank it took some time for the buy-in.
Well, the anti-money laundering is a big issue, and it's one of the biggest risks that we face. As part of our AML examination, we need to train every single employee, all the way to the board. The board needs to have AML training, our executives, and all the way down. And when those examiners come in, they go and they interview. They go into a branch and they pick up that person and say, tell me a little bit about these rules. That is very difficult.
It is.
That is very, very difficult. We have a very strong and committed staff that has bear with all the changes and the regulations. And we're very grateful because really they made this happen. Right? This is not the chairman or the executives. This is the organization that is rated. And changing culture, it's something that, it takes a long time. I've been here for 10 years, and it's an ever-changing world. The changes are breakneck. Every day is something new. You know, we have rules from here, we have rules from the OECD countries that are imposed on us. So all of that, you know, it takes a long time. But we felt that we are ready. The difference between having a rating agency coming in and looking at you is a little bit different than our regulators or our examiners or our auditors. Because
or even an internal culture,
yeah, because this is public.
Yeah.
Right? Our examinations from the central bank, you know, they're exhaustive, and but they're not public documents. This is, you can go into the website of CARICRIS and see what they found that it's, you know, strong, what are some of the challenges, what can change the rating, because this is not a one-time thing. They're going to come next year and they're going to do it again. Right? So we want this is a way of checking ourselves.
Is it, and I hear that, it's almost implementing the quality standards that you want, and to align yourself with not just regional but international standards by getting this rating. But what does it mean for people locally? What does it mean for customers?
For customers,
Well, there is some good news in that respect. Knowing how sound a bank is very important. Everybody should know that. And sometimes, you know, Belize Bank has been here for 120 years.
Wow.
Continuing operating, and people feel that banks can fail. Banks do fail. We all know that. So, you know, for the general public, the good news is that the central bank is implementing a deposit insurance for small depositors.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
so
the
it means
general
if the bank
public
closes down, I have some sort of security.
Right, for the general public. So the people, general public will not lose. But you know, if you are a company, if you are a wealthy individual, if you are a statutory body or the government, you need to make sure that if you put millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars in a bank, that your funds are safe, that those funds are used properly, and that the bank is managed in a way that you know, complies with international standards. You know, there are many things that they look at. They look at the capital, the quality of the assets, make sure that we are not exposed to one particular industry or one particular group of people or single borrowers. They want to make sure that we have enough liquidity. They look at management. They look at, you know, they do sensitivity analysis. What happens if interest rates go up? What happens if interest rates go down? They look at also the technology side of things. You know, 10 years ago, banks didn't worry too much about technology. Today, technology, you know, cybersecurity risk is up there, right? And for us, credit risk might be one or two echelons down. So things are changing. They look at our technology. We have a very, very strong group of very bright people looking at our cybersecurity. They also look at our business continuity. What happens if something were to go wrong? So they look if we have a server, if you have a backup, if we can move all the information immediately into another site. So they look at business continuity too. So there's a lot of things, right?
It took 10 years before you guys decided, you know what, let's do our self-assessment. Let's do this assessment, or have one of the top firms coming in to do it. You did mention that they'll be coming back again next year. Will it be year and year afterwards? And one of the things about this is that people love to go where they know that they're secured. You just received this rating, so I'm sure your customer base will be going up. So will it be a year after year after year, every year, annually?
We are looking to do it every year because it's something that is important to have. You know, when I don't know if you know, correspondent banking has been in the news for years now. You know, that for us has been now stable, but it's still a risk, and this is very important for maintaining our correspondent banking. You know?
And that was actually going to be my question, because I know it has been, and not just in Belize, you know, across the region, because we just don't have the level of amount of money that makes the risk worth it for these larger banks. There's been a lot of struggle. What does this rating mean in terms of being able to keep the relationships going over time, so that next year we don't hear, well, you know, this one doesn't want to deal with the bank anymore in Belize because there's too much risk?
Look, we have corresponding banking risk as a high risk. We put things in place with our correspondent bank. We invite them over to come into the bank. They do their own, they send a group of people, they go into our boardroom, they do selective testing, they look at transactions. So they do on a yearly basis their own assessment. And if there are things that they see that they don't like, you know, we would have to do some corrective actions. So far, so good. But, you know, being that we went through what we went through, you know, we're very cognizant that we need to make sure that we protect that relationship. We visit them at the high level, and they visit us. So I think we're doing the right things, right?
So the CARICRIS rating, is that going to be helpful in maintaining that relationship?
Yes, absolutely. The first thing when this rating came in, the first thing I did, I started check this out. You know, we did this, and they came back and congratulated us, and a great step. But if you look at the rating, you know, they mentioned that, you know, the maintenance of this rating will be based on certain things. So they just don't come and tell you, you know, you're A+, B-. So
they give you homework too.
Oh, they give you homework. They say, you know, these are the things that could happen that could affect this rating. Right? Now,
and there was, you know, the bank doesn't function in isolation. You're dependent on your customers, be it the general public or large companies. And so there are a lot of intangibles that you won't be able to control over the next years. So talk to me about how, in being able to meet the standards for the credit rating and getting the AA+.
So local, we have a AA+, which is one notch before the government, and a BBB- in international standards.
Yes. So in being able to secure that, how do you plan ahead if you want to keep this rating, knowing that there are other issues externally that you won't be able to control?
Well, you answer yourself, right? There are certain things that we cannot control, right? For instance, they mention in their constraining factors, we have a reliance on the Belizean economy. There's nothing we can do about that. You know, we are in Belize and we are a local bank, and we are constrained like every other bank to, you know, the whims of the economy. Our job is to make sure that we maintain a very strong financial sector. The stronger the bank is, the stronger, the more we can finance the productive sector. So, you know, we are just a part of a bigger picture. So there are macro factors that could affect us. But that's why they do their sensitivity analysis when they say, you know, GDP contracts by X, this could happen, or interest rate will go up by X, and this is what happened. So they look at our earnings, they look at our capital, which is the cushion that allows us to absorb those shocks.
You know, one of the things that we noticed, I think you guys came in on the show to launch the chip. Your card with chip. I think you guys were the first one. You guys were the first ones. So while we're top notch when it comes to ratings, what are some of the new products that will be coming in? And I think this is definitely one of the things that they'll be looking for.
Well, correct. And everything that is coming down the pipe has to do with technology. You know, we are on a path of digitization, and I think most banks, if they want to compete in the coming years, you have to be able to get on that bandwagon. And we are spending a lot of money with consultants.
You mean catch the bandwagon, right? That's what we need to do.
We need to catch the bandwagon. But the good thing is that, you know, we have countries around us, and we have the US, and even the region, where we have a little crystal ball that know what's happening. We know what is going to happen, and we just need to adjust, and we need to be first to market. You know, we want to use technology to be able to reach bankerize a lot of people, financial integration, be able to bank people in remote areas.
Yeah.
And those things are being done in Latin America and US, and Jamaica is doing a great job.
Yeah.
So, opening an account with a phone, everybody has a phone now.
Yeah.
Everybody has
Access to internet.
Access to the
Yes.
internet. So, we need to work with the regulators, we need to work with legislation to make sure that, if somebody lives in a remote area, they can open an account. Of course, they won't be able to transact millions of dollars, but, they can start with $200, $300, and they don't have to come inside the bank. The truth is that nobody wakes up in the morning and says, today I'm going to go to the bank. What a great experience. Nobody wants to really go to the bank. They want to go into their app and you pass money to her. I can give you money. I can pay this person. I can pay this person. And that is happening in Belize. It started.
Yeah.
So digitization is really where we're looking at.
Yeah. Now there was another issue I wanted to look at, which was your loan portfolio, which is a critical part of your rating in being able to hit a particular target for non-performing loans. I want to discuss that in seeing how the bank was able to achieve that and how do you maintain it.
We don't have enough time to go into that, what we did, but what I can tell you is that 7 years ago our non-performing portfolio was over 30%, and now is less than 1. It's below domestic benchmarks, below U.S. benchmarks, and even that we have enough provisions to cover for that whole thing. So it's just prudent management, underwriting policies. We make sure that we don't get in areas that we don't want to. We think are very risky.
Yeah.
We have.
So it's more at the screening level that you've been able to bring this down.
Yeah, and diversification. Make sure that the portfolio is not 100% business banking or 100% retail banking. You have a 50-50 portfolio or a 70 or a 60-40, and make sure that diversification is the key. So sometimes bankers have to be held. We always have targets to make in terms of profits, but sometimes we have to hold back and say, we're not going to go there because the portfolio is going to be skewed, and we pass. So that's a little bit how we kind of manage our loan book.
And at the same time, you also have your clients to serve and always looking for an increased customer base and marketing brand new products and innovative products. So it comes with a balancing act.
It is a balancing act all around. And it's a balancing act to keep, right now, one of the biggest challenges is to keep abreast of all the changes that are happening, you know, and find what makes sense for our industry. Right? We have an innovation committee in the bank. It's a committee of young people that are hungry and vibrant.
Nice.
We make sure that none of us old folks are there. Right?
Young people and old people.
Yeah, we don't mix it. We have our executive room, but we do listen to them. We do listen to them. They do a lot of research, and they bring a lot of good information to the executives. For us to. And it sort of they digest it for us, and then we start to say, well, that sounds good. That sounds good. That sounds good.
One of the things that we and we do this on a daily basis in terms of the eye opener, and the eye opener speaks a lot to everybody, and it gives ideas on what to do, how to do, and to start your day. I want your perspective on how important it is to do a self-assessment. What does it do for somebody?
Well, a self-assessment. On a personal level or from a bank?
Banking, I asked this because then I know how important it's going to be to touch another business.
Yeah, no, listen, self-assessments are important. Sometimes people or companies don't want to do it either for cost or because maybe they don't want to hear.
Because they don't have to.
Or they don't have to, or they don't want to hear what somebody says about them. They're being critical. And somebody, if you can take criticism, then don't do it, right? But it's like going to the doctor.
Yeah.
The doctor says, your cholesterol is 1 million.
You feel good, but your cholesterol.
You feel good, but you're high. You have to do something about it. So, introspection. Make sure that you prepare yourself for these assessments. And then continue.
Yeah.
Continue on that path, in that journey, no matter what happens. Always you can get things, weather events, things that could affect us. But you make sure that you have those things in front of you.
Yeah.
Make sure that there are mitigating factors
Yeah.
that you can implement quickly.
Yeah. You clearly outlined that this was not an overnight process, and it took many years for the bank to be able to get to the point where you could invite CARICRIS in and achieve the rating that you did. You are the deputy CEO, and you are also the chief risk officer, so your involvement is critical, along with the rest of the team. What would you say is perhaps the change or implemented policy that you are most proud of, that took work, but you are most proud of, that the bank was able to achieve on the path to achieving this rating?
It's hard to say, it's our AML framework or our risk management framework. And I think is a compliance or it is being true to our core values and our virtues that we repeat on a daily basis, right? That's the big picture, right? Being helpful, being honest, being integrity, professional. Those things, if you keep true to your values and your core values, those things will put you in the right path.
Definitely.
And as a part of your rating system, there was also an assessment of the staff, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of their quality level and
They use something called CAMEL approach, right? And under M is management and staff. And they look at our staff, they interview our staff, and that is critical, right? It's critical that the examiners or the people that came and did this rating don't talk to myself or Mr. Giuseppe or other executives, and then underneath, what we say is not taking hold. The other thing about CARICRIS is that this is voluntary. Most regional companies that want to access capital in the capital markets, it is a requirement for institutional investors for them to get a CARICRIS rating for access funds. Now we don't need it. We're not there yet. Maybe in the future, but we did this voluntarily, and we're happy. We're happy with the results. We'll continue to do it every year and come back.
All
Excellent.
right.
Congratulations.
Well, I was going to say, and thank you for coming in and talking about it. It is perhaps not, as you said, it's the first Belizean company to seek out the rating and get the rating that you have. So it was important for us to be able to explain it further to the public as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
Good.
We're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be featuring a well-known entrepreneur and autism advocate. Tiffany Simpson is going to be joining us after the break, so stay tuned.
Signing up for Smart's broadband
And welcome back to Open Your Eyes on a lovely Tuesday morning. We're now moving into our third and final segment for the morning. Everyday People Feature. We're doing a feature here. And in with us, we've got the mompreneur, techie and autism advocate. Tiffany Simpson is in with us. She's an author and entrepreneur. And it's nice to see you again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll tell you what, first and foremost, love your lipstick. Love it.
Thank you.
It says a lot.
Thank you.
Tiff, you know, you've been on a bumpy road over the past few, but at the same time, you've got the tires and the wherewithal to move on. Right. I'm simply talking about the strength that you've got. Yeah. Talk to us about what you've got going on now as a mompreneur and how you're moving on.
Okay, over the past couple of years, I've been going through a rough patch with my business and my personal life, right? I've been on the media a number of times. And
countless times.
Yes, countless times, but I never spoke about, you know, those challenges. It's usually geared towards the challenges I overcome, and then how I am able to produce a solution and offer that solution to the community as a business, right? But over the past, I guess, few months, couple years, I've been going through some challenges that were a bit unusual, right? Yeah. But during that period, I think that I became more aware of my true potential, not just as an entrepreneur and, you know, a techie mompreneur, but rather as maybe stepping out as an influencer and helping others to kind of look at challenges as a way to improve their circumstances, to improve their skills, and to use that as a platform to expand, right?
And so you're venturing into this step. You've produced an audio book.
Yes.
And it's called We Did It, Overcoming Challenges with Mental Illness.
Yes.
Now, it's interesting because your story, for us at least here, I don't know about your other interviews, it's always been intertwined with the special needs of your son as a child with autism.
Right.
And so much of what has really spurred you into action came from his autism. So it's just the current part of it's always a part of the conversation.
Right.
But now you're taking the focus and putting it specifically on his autism and the overall issue of mental illness.
Right.
After all these years, why is this step necessary now?
I think that over the past couple years, I have been able to come to terms with the fact that mental illness can arise from trauma. Trauma of disappointment, loss, right? Segregation, exclusion. Those are the types of trauma that can cause that mental breakdown. And I have seen on the media on several occasions about cyberbullying and other things, and you know, and there has been a lot of advocacy for you know, depression and suicide, but I think in this audiobook I was able to break down some of the thought process that went into coming up with these solutions. Not just arriving, oh, here's an idea, I can do this. Here's an idea, I can do that. But what are some of the strategies I use in taking care of my mental health on a day-to-day basis to ensure that I was in the frame of mind to come up with solutions, to see things from a different angle. And that's one of the, I also got my certificate as a master life coach.
Nice.
And then,
Congrats.
yes, thank you. And then I wanted to share with my audience not just overcoming the challenges, but a series of proven strategies that can work and that are applicable not just to situations where, you know, you might not be a person who has a child with mental illness or you know, going through or special learning needs, I should say.
Yeah.
Special learning needs, not mental illness, but special learning needs. You might not be in that situation, but there are circumstances that are beyond your control that can trigger these mental breakdowns, this depression, and then it manifests into, you know, these what you call it, destructive behavior, right? And it's not just it's not always just violence. It's manifested in many different areas. But being able to keep it together, as people believe that I so casually do, has taken a lot of practice. You know, it's kind of like going to the gym, right? Where you work out your physical muscle, you have to work out your mental muscles as well. So that's what I cover in this audiobook, where I break down, I have 20 strategies for mental health, overcoming seemingly impossible challenges and moving forward.
You know, you said something, and it really is a great opportunity to introduce this, because we speak of mental health as it's something that other people have.
Right.
We all have mental health, just like we have physical health. You know, and you're either healthy or not healthy or struggling to be healthy.
Right.
And so that's mental health. And so what you're saying is that it's taking the challenges and the experiences that you have had, which any parent gets overwhelmed. Any parent gets stressed out, you know, exhausted or stuck, you know, in coping with doing right for the children. You had an additional challenge of a child with special needs that are not catered for in the country. So you're taking your experience and how you were able to keep yourself in good mental health to have that extra energy to provide for him. And that's what you're trying to deliver to people. Is that what it is?
Yes, that's what it is.
So we can't go through the audiobook, but we can get some of the tips, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Of course.
So let's say you meet somebody who identifies with you. My child they could be autistic, perhaps they have a physical disability, or whatever it is. And they come to you and say, Tiffany, the school just won't understand that he learns differently. I'm tired of fighting with them. You know, my partner thinks he or she's lazy. You know, the teachers think he's lazy. So talk to us about how you empower someone to keep the strength to keep on advocating.
Yes. So my first advice to somebody in that situation is to sort of isolate the cause of conflict, right? So if there is conflict around a certain issue, or you have to look at the different triggers, right? You have to be able to identify the triggers. So once you've identified what triggers your partner or the teacher, you have to start working on ways to isolate those triggers so that they don't occur as often, right? Once you minimize the occurrence of these triggers, then you can start to put together a strategy for working with your child to overcome their challenges. Now, one of the things you need to be always aware of is time, right? There's only 24 hours in the day. So for as long as these triggers are, you know, just blowing up all over the place, it doesn't really give you the flexibility to get anything done other than, you know, out in a bunch of fires, right? So the first thing is to not get these fires going, right? Once you've done that, then you have to look at your child's situation. Are they being affected by these triggers because it's a back and forth thing, you know. It's not a
It's not
issue.
separate.
Yeah, it's not separate. So if you stop one, you will see the other will start to fade in the back. So once there's that opening, right, you can start working with your child on his or her confidence. One of the main things is it's a confidence issue.
Confidence building afterwards.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So they tend to do things to get attention when they don't understand, or they need to deflect attention from the fact that they don't understand. And because everybody learns differently.
Of course.
Right? And then with the audiobook, can I pitch a signal? Right? We also offer, there's some gifts that you get along with the audiobooks for building reading and math skills, right? Because those are foundational, right? And once they're able to build those, they're able to better operate in classroom settings, with their social skills, with their peers. They're able to better communicate, and then they're not as reactive, right?
Yeah.
But Tiff, children with special needs are being born every day.
Yes.
And it's not everybody who've got the willpower to propel themselves to eventually help that child. But here is where your know it how comes in.
Right.
What are some of the first things that we should do in order to make that step in making change for the child?
Being less responsive to those, because you have to understand this is a fuel, and it's like you scratch a match and you throw it on gasoline, right? If there's gasoline, don't scratch a match and throw it on there. Don't. All right, because it's going to start a fire.
Yeah.
Right. So the first thing you need to do is become less responsive where the child's behavior is concerned. If a child, especially with special needs, know that if they do something that will trigger a reaction from you, they're going to do it just to trigger a reaction from you.
Because they want that attention.
Yes, they want that attention. So you have to instill in them positive attention.
Yeah.
You know, those things that will give them attention, and those things you will withhold attention from them for. So if they do something that's praiseworthy, you praise them.
Yeah.
But if they do something
that is not praiseworthy,
you don't respond.
Yeah.
You don't respond. See, any response is attention. It's reinforcement.
Yeah. And you have just broken down what seems to be a very complex topic for many people. Positive reinforcement as opposed to negative reinforcement.
Right.
We react to a bad behavior, we get more of that.
Yes.
We react to a good behavior, we get more of that.
Right.
And so, that's such a critical point. I think that you can be able to share with parents. Who would you say is the ideal target group who will benefit from listening to the audiobook?
I think mainly women with children.
Yeah.
And the reason being is because there's a lot of pressure on them to kind of navigate their daily lives and the lives of their children, right? It's culturally one of their major responsibilities, and it can become a frustration, right?
Yeah.
And then if we're able to help these women overcome the overwhelm and the challenge of not being so responsive,
Yeah.
right? If the child does something, don't scream, right? Don't hit the child. It is actually a reinforcement.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is.
It is a reinforcement.
And that's one of the, especially for first-time mothers. I think that's one of the things that
all-time mothers
needs to be learned.
I see
because
parents with multiple children reacting to the youngest one.
And I'll tell you what, I'm a dad that I am hands-on with my kids. I love my picnic day.
Right.
And so anything that I could teach them or being reactive to certain things, I will react. So you're right. You know, we're right. I'm extremely reactive to how they react to things.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think this is definitely a good way for parents on a
Yes,
whole
that's parents on a whole.
to move on. So where
Yes.
can we get the audiobook and how can
Well,
we get this?
right now you can get it directly from me. We just got our new, I was doing sales during the Christmas and I sold out. So I just got another set of copies, so you can get directly from me. You can call me on my cell phone. It's 600-1611. The cost is $50, and you also get access, a 1-year access to our Read With Me Club and the Caribbean Maths Club. That's a $500 value.
Wow.
All right.
So for $50 you get a $500
yes,
wow.
Yes, gift. So you're able to, because what we believe in is implementation as well, right? Because we can't just tell you what to do and then not equip you to do it. Because,
of course.
You know, then it's like we're running a little rocket on you.
Yeah, you're not getting value for your money.
Yes, exactly. So in order for you to take advantage of the information offered on the audiobook, right? We also, we have the My Super Health Club, right? And in there we have recipes for mental health, right? So yes, and our little catchphrase is 10 times your genius.
Okay. All right,
it.
so you get
I love
these
it.
memberships by being able to purchase the audiobook. My final question is, you know, I think parents in general oftentimes feel very judged.
Yes.
And they're always concerned of whether or not they're doing things right or wrong or whatnot. It's interesting because in this growing culture where people have access to people on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube, they do look for parenting advice.
Right.
How open do you think the Belizean audience will be to get that parenting advice from someone from Belize?
They've been quite open. I was a bit surprised during the Christmas when, well, I was dressed as Supermom also. We have the Supermom. There's the
Can
cape.
I see this?
There's the cape. There's the cape. There's the mask.
And you had your son with you too.
Yes,
Yeah,
and the belt with the S on it. Yes, it was really
great
nice.
marketing.
Yes,
I
great
love
marketing.
it. I love it.
So I go to the schools, right? Because it wouldn't be fair for me to talk to the parents and not talk to the kids about how they too can facilitate the process, right? So I go to the schools as Supermom in my boots and my cape and everything, and I talk to the kids mainly about behavioral issues, but also to provide them with much needed materials to kind of help them to understand. I also have the Read With Me Club also meets at the Leo Brother Library.
Nice.
Where I dress as Supermom. And
I was going to say, why did we get Supermom this morning?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Tiffany's a good guest, but we could have had Supermom
No, I
instead.
have my Supermom costume, and I can Clark Kent my way into that.
We're going to do a snap and then she's there. But it is, you know, I think one of the things we have known about you for a long time is that you are always innovative in the products that you want to produce, and you put a lot into them. And so the latest now is an audiobook, and I think it would be helpful to any mom to just hear somebody else's story. And if you have additional tips as well, then that's even better.
Yes.
So
well, on the Supermom show, I offer tips on overcoming challenges with socioeconomic exclusion, right? Because there's also the taboos, right? I'm a single mom. I have a son with autism. But after you become a single mom, then you realize how society views single mom, what they're capable of or not capable of. And you're treated as such, right? And those are some of the challenges and narratives that many women in those types of situations are unable to overcome. It becomes a part of who they are because they're not able to tell themselves another story.
Wow. There you go, Supermom.
So you can contact Tiffany or Supermom to get her audio book. It's $50. It does come with free access to several online clubs. And so you're getting more than just the book itself. That number, once again, is?
600-1611.
All right. Tiffany, thank you for coming in and sharing the details.
Thank you for having me.
All right. We're going to go ahead and take our final break now. And when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up. So stay tuned.
The Belize
Yo, Belize, this is Tig the artist, Bin the hardest.
And I am
And we're back.
Just like that, we have come to the end of our show. It is a beautiful day, and we continue to say that. We got things started this morning with a wonderful conversation with the Department of the Environment and the Belize Business Bureau on the implementation of biodegradable standards.
That's right. And of course, that technical training takes place today, tomorrow, and a bit into Friday as well. They are looking at defining the standards that will be used for biodegradable products what I can clearly hear from that conversation, John, is that there is a lot that people have to know and understand about this industry, but also that there are opportunities in terms of investment and opportunities in terms of being able to transform some of the existing businesses into those that will be able to provide biodegradable products.
Definitely. Change is wonderful. Change is a good thing. And if we're moving...
Some
change, of course. Thank you. Thank you. You know, if we're moving into, you know, into new things, then, you know, let's try to be readily acceptable. But this one is definitely something that we need to look on of course, saving our environment. We also want to say a big thank you to Filippo Alario, who is the Deputy CEO and Chief Risk Officer of the Belize Bank. And we had a wonderful conversation there with him. The Belize Bank received the investment grade rating.
Yeah, from CariCris, which is an entity that is connected to Standard & Poor's, which is a well-known rating agency. You know, I thought it was interesting because you hear the story and you're like, okay, well, what does that mean for customers? And I think the key thing is, there were two things I thought of based on the conversation. One was looking at the fact that you do need to know, in this day and age, you do need to know that you can trust the financial institution that you're using, because we hear so often of different challenges that banks and financial institutions have gotten into, and how you can actually lose money in those processes. So when you do have that trust that it's a stable company and that it is going to thrive, that's always good as a customer. Secondly, I also think, you know, a bit of Belizean pride in terms of the rating itself, and the assessment included looking at the staff, and predominantly Belizean staff, that was able to meet the criteria and assist in being able to get them the rating. So it shows that we have some great talented professionals in the country as well.
Definitely. And, you know, we, of course, when it comes to our final segment a while ago, that was definitely a good one. There's a new audiobook in town, and it's actually called Overcoming Challenges with Mental Illness. So we want to say a big thank you to Tiffany Simpson, who is a mompreneur, a techie, and autism advocate. That was a great conversation as well.
Absolutely. You know what? Tiffany always amazes me. She's just always looking ahead in terms of coming up with new ideas for new products and how they can help the Belizean public. She's done quite a bit in terms of helping children in specific areas of learning, and now she's tackling a relationship and also providing services with moms, which clearly she can identify with. Listen, it could not have been easy, and I should say still not that easy, advocating for your child in a world where it just simply isn't adapted, and especially a country that isn't adapted for people with special needs like children with autism. So it's a continuous struggle, and it takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of optimism as well. And so she's able to share those insights in the audiobook as well. You can contact her to get the audiobook and also get some of the tips that she shares there.
Definitely. You know, so many things happen every day across our country, and what we do here at Open Your Eyes is that we bring the professionals in to break them down for you. Now, if you've got any questions, any concerns, drop us a line at oye@channel5belize.com.
You can also drop me a line at Marlene_OYE at channel5belize.com. Find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ, and
on our Instagram page at OYE Belize. I was hoping you weren't going to go there, at OYE Belize, all right? And you could always join us again tomorrow morning when we open our eyes
to start your morning right. Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open. Have a wonderful day, Belize.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, our country, your bank.